welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as 50 hours, but hey, it's something. Now, this episode is going to be a big topic, and I have absolutely no faith that I will do it any justice. I'll do it some justice, I'll be fair. But, I mean, there are a lot more qualified people that can talk about this. And, I mean, this is just me rambling, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, things are... It'll be a decent episode, I guess. I mean, it's something that I didn't think that I'd have to make, but I mean, it is apparently... you'll see what I mean in a minute when I actually talk about it. But first, let's get right into the news. First, we're going to talk about something interesting happening regarding COVID-19. You see, it turns out there's some interesting things that are going on. You see, here's something interesting that has happened. You see, apparently, there is an order in certain areas that states that if a person with a learning disability has COVID-19 and they are taken to the emergency room, they are given an order not to resuscitate them if they go under. Yeah, that's, literally, no, don't do that. Whatever happened to the Hippocratic Oath? Doctors are supposed to, protect their patients and, try to resuscitate them and make them better. It says so right here. Into whatsoever houses I enter, I will enter to help the sick, and I will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing or harm, especially from abusing the bodies of man or woman, bond or free. Exactly. It says so right there. Protect the people. That's what you're supposed to do. It's been pointed out clearly that doing this specifically for people with learning disabilities is obviously, some form of eugenics. You're picking the people who you want to help, and then just choosing, these people who are, not normal, we don't want them. And this is just completely discriminatory. Imagine this. For those who might not even completely grasp this, imagine if it came out that a certain medical profession, in a certain country, wherever, it said, doctors are not allowed to resuscitate black people, or doctors are not supposed to resuscitate gay people, or anything of the sort. You're choosing, because these people are not made in the way that you want them to be, that you will not resuscitate them. That is eugenics. Even if it wasn't eugenics, it's still bad. There is not much else I can say about this topic because I am not in any regular field to regarding any of this. But it's a big issue that I think should be looked at, especially because we're still in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so the next story comes from Biden's cabinet. You see, Biden, one of his cabinet picks has been a bit controversial. Oh, and I'm not talking about Neera Tanden because I don't want to, because why would I give a shit about Neera Tanden? I'm more concerned with a cabinet position that may actually have a decent choice that seems to be having a little bit of controversy. Deb Haaland being nominated for Interior Secretary. You see, she is having a decent number of opposition from Republicans, and also, the Republican Party, just saying that actually makes it implied, the oil industry is also opposing her, because Deb Haaland was part of the anti-Dakota Access Pipeline protests, and has been well known to be in favor of a Green New Deal and oppose any form of fracking or oil taking or whatever. And this is kind of getting into a bit of interestingness because she will be put in charge of the agency that will be in charge of the conservation of federal land and natural resources. So, Haaland being in that position is 100% a good thing for us and 100% a bad thing for the oil industry, because they will probably want to start drilling in some of that federal land and take some of those natural resources. But Hollande will be probably, at the very least, a little bit hesitant to actually go through with that. In fact, I think it'll be literally like that thing of like, they need not darken my doorstep. So many people have been saying like the Republican senator from Texas, John Qanon, literally made a tweet like going like, she was part of these evil protests, and it's like, cool. So you're gonna confirm her? Because that's not a negative. Like, and I mean, I'm gonna be that guy because I have to be that guy. Like, Hollande isn't even like that controversial of a choice. Like, I mean, she's played ball with the DNC like a lot. She endorsed Tom Perez over Keith Ellison in 2017. She was a Warren Dem and was sort of like in Warren's like little fake squad because everybody wants to like make their own squad ever since the squad actually started being a big name. Like, I mean, think about it. They have the Freedom Force, the corporate, like the super centrist corporate Democrats like Max Rose, Jared Golden, and like Jill Cisneros, and like someone else, I forget who, tried to form like a little clique of like the national security Democrats. And Elizabeth Warren tried to have her own little squad, and in that little squad it was Deb Haaland, Kathleen Clark, Lori Trahan, and Katie Porter. And even to a degree, she tried to have like Ayanna Pressley endorse her so that she can have like credence of like, see, I have an actual squad member, so my little new squad will be cool. But it was like, no. But I mean, again, that is not to take away from the fact that Hollande is a good choice for this, given this particular field in this particular situation and Hollande's particular record. She is fine for this position. I would be a lot more angry if she was being picked for a position of like, I don't know, like foreign policy, which is where the Warren Dems always have their blind spots. But for this particular position, Hollande is a good choice. And I also lobbied for Hollande to be in this position so that we could have a special election so we could replace her with someone else, which we have one. Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, way better than Hollande. Endorse her, give her money. Speaking of someone who is looking into getting money for politics, David Perdue is trying to make a Senate comeback to beat Raphael Warnock in 2022. Because Perdue really is into losing. Like, this is so dumb. Why? Literally, why? You literally just had this huge epic loss that literally everybody saw. I honestly thought that you would actually win against Ossoff because Ossoff wasn't really even that good of a candidate. And now you're thinking, I'm decided that I'm going to run against the person who literally carried Ossoff to victory. I think so. He is like, no, you are not going to beat radical liberal Raphael Warnock. You ain't. You're not. In fact, I doubt you will make it through the primary. Because have you seen the people that they're floating around for people to potentially like be in this Republican primary? They're floating Doug Collins, who ran and lost in 2020. They're floating Kelly Loeffler, because appointing her actually seemed to work really well. Literally, that was the whole point of them appointing her to be in this seat. Because they thought that Collins was going to be they thought that appointing a super pro-Trump person was going to hurt their chances, and nominating someone who was supposed to be the moderate was actually going to work. Then Loeffler decided, nah, I kind of don't want to do that. Vernon Jones, who was a former member of the Georgia House of Representatives, who made this whole big spiel about like he was going to be a Democrat that endorsed Trump, and then he like joined the Republican Party. And last but 100% not least, someone who is somewhat relevant to the topic of this main video, of the main seat, like the main topic, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Yeah, Purdue ain't even gonna make it through the primary. But yeah, I've been crapping on Republicans a little bit. Now it's time for me to crap on some Democrats. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot spent $281.5 million in federal COVID-19 relief money on police payroll. Mayor Lori Lightfoot's administration spent, that's just a reiteration of the title. The number came to light as Lightfoot seeks City Council approval to transfer around $65 million in unspent federal COVID-19 money into the 2021 budget after the Biden administration waived Federal Emergency Management Agency local funding matches and extended the deadline to spend federal dollars until the end of this year. Now, this comes after Lori Lightfoot specifically told the aldermen that they would not be doing that. Alderman Daniel LaSpada says right here, we asked for assurances they wouldn't spend it all on police. That's the last thing people want, to infuse hundreds of millions of more dollars into the police department right now. Yes, and as this guy said, they would rather have the money be put towards housing relief or other programs that would help these struggling residents, not the police. That is literally the last thing they want their money spent on right now. But Lori Lightfoot decided, no, I ain't gonna do that. Need to support my pigs in a blanket, am I right? Okay, so I had to say this about Lori Lightfoot because I mistakenly thought that she was going to be the remedy of the Chicago machine that was needed. Not in the first round. No one ever even considered her being like that in the first round. They only considered that in the second round when Tony Preckwinkle entered the scene. But anyways, now let's move on to another Democratic hotspot. New York. You see, I think I accidentally skipped this controversy, so let me reiterate some of the things that happened. You see, apparently, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, is apparently in a bit of a pickle right now, because apparently he had concealed the full extent of nursing home related deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of people are calling him out on this. You know, Republicans started it out, but eventually, since this is a very serious claim, a lot of Democrats started criticizing him about this as well. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stated that there needs to be a full investigation into Andrew Cuomo and what he did, because this is very bad, and we should not even, people have been even floating the idea of, literally, not recalling, I don't think they can recall, but, impeaching Cuomo. Because this is, everybody's this is a bridge too far, you can't do this, this is, a big no-no. And Cuomo has been trying to get other, legislators try and cover his ass, pretty much. But this particularly revolves around one exchange between him and New York Assemblyman Ron Kim. Cuomo apparently literally calling up Ron T. Kim and saying, hey bro, you need to issue a statement for, to cover our asses. You need to do this. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, you need to do this because I can destroy you. Paraphrase, but that last statement is 100% quoted. He can destroy, I will destroy you. We are in business together and we do not cross certain lines. Yeah, Kim released a statement, all right. He released Cuomo's statement to the public, and now people are calling out Cuomo even more so. And this is 100% backfiring. And I think this is going to be both do the thing that Cuomo wants, but is also 100% backfiring. You see, he may destroy Ron T. Kim's legislative career. Cuomo will try to get the Democratic machine to probably try and get rid of Ron T. Kim in his legislative position. But the fact that Ron T. Kim is getting all this free media coverage is probably going to be what shoots Ron T. Kim into running against Cuomo in 2022. Now, here's the thing. I don't know who is going to be the progressive, torchbearer for, New York in 2022. But a lot of people have been trying to do a lot of things. The progressives have been trying to get rid of Cuomo for a while now in New York. Zephyr Teachout, Jermaine Williams, and Cynthia Nixon. Bill de Blasio whisper. But, basically, it seems like this might be might propel Ron T. Kim to be the torchbearer in 2022. He's at the very least going to get a bunch of media coverage that's going to put him in good faith with a lot of progressives. So if he potentially does run in 2022, that's the thing that could be happening. I mean, New York has a slew of progressive people to choose from. You know, I would be down to see like a certain number of people run for certain New York offices. For example, Bill de Blasio. You're not going to be mayor anymore. Why don't you try and do something? Maybe run for House. Maybe run for the Senate seat. Maybe run for governor. But we'll have to wait and see. Last story is a very interesting thing that is 100% like a good thing. Support for third U.S. political party at high point. 62% a party is needed. Highest support for a third party by 1 percentage point. So yeah, Gallup, they release a poll that they do every so often, basically saying like, hey, do we think that a third party is needed in U.S. politics? And these poll numbers they've always shifted. You see, originally, like they started doing this in 2003, and it was originally 56 saying parties are doing fine and 40 saying third party is needed. But they've kind of, at this point, always stagnated to a percentage where people are supporting a third party. But this is the highest number it's ever been. 62% of all Americans believe that a third party is needed. Now, in regards to party lines, you see, that's where it gets a little more interesting. 70% of independents believe that there is a need for a major new party, obviously. 46% of Democrats believe that there should be a new party. But 63 Republicans are now saying that they're going to be supporting it, that a third party is needed in U.S. politics. Now, the interesting thing is that it's actually a flip for the two major parties. You see, originally, 52% of Democrats believed that a third party was needed, and 40% of Republicans believed that a third party was needed. But now it is flipped. The reason being, Trump has been floating that idea of the Patriot Party. And I think another reason why it has shifted is because I think that the Democrats that were saying that they wanted a third party probably are more disillusioned with the aspect of a third party as opposed to reforming the Democratic Party, because, I mean, for a number of reasons, they could have potentially been swayed by like certain allegations about the Green Party shenanigans that were going on. They could possibly be swayed because Moving for People's parties turned out to be kind of a bust, and also that just as Democrats and Brand New Congress and all these other groups, they're doing really well. Like, I mean, say whatever the hell you want about, you know, like, oh, the AOC is bad. Like, say whatever you want about DSA or Justice Dems or whatever other like big group that you hate because you're shallow and you don't understand how political things work. They have AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, and Jamal Bowman in office right now. That's 6. 6 is way more than 0. Now, to beg the question, do we need a third party? I mean, you're watching my channel, so the answer is obviously yes. But of course, we need to be particular. What's the party? Like, again, all the big progressive news boys say this. You know, they're always like, oh, well, I believe we need not just a third party, but a fourth party. I believe in a multi-party system, blah, blah, blah. Like, all these guys are willing to say it, but, I mean, I'm the only one that's interviewed, I wouldn't say that. I'm not the only one who's interviewed. Well, I was making fun of Kyle Kalinske and Humanist Report. Have they interviewed Jill Stein? I don't think they have. I mean, I think Mike did. Maybe. I don't know. But I mean, he interviewed Howie Hawkins, but I interviewed 2. He interviewed 1, so I mean, look at me, a big time hotshot over here. 488 subs, baby. But basically, like, everybody says that, and then they never really follow through with it. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like, what? Like, I mean, they didn't even explain, like, how would this third party system, like, everybody always says that we need a third party, but the problem is they don't explain the whats, they don't explain the hows, they don't explain the whys. For example, the Constitution Party, you want them to be the new third party? their party that believes that the Republican Party is too far to the left. You want those guys to be in the political discourse? I mean, they should be. When I say I want a multi-party system, I mean it. And when I say I need a multi-party system, I know that means you're going to get at least one far-right party that's going to be pushed to the sidelines. The far-rightists are going to have a particular voting bloc of their own. And I understand that's a 100% real possibility. I made a podcast where I literally went over, I literally went over, what would happen if the United States had a multi-party system. And I literally point out the fact that if it happened, there would 100% be a super far-right, literally borderline fascist party that would be somewhat successful. Okay, when I say somewhat successful, I only mean that because in the United States, far-right is a lot more successful than certain other areas of the world. Look at all these world places with all these, multi-party systems. A lot of them do have literal far-right fascist parties. They don't get far, but they do exist. Okay, now that we're on that trend, I think it's a perfect transition to the main subject of this video. It's a good thing that I don't monetize my videos, but this is the ill-fated QAnon episode. This is it. I didn't think that I would have to make this video because silly me didn't think that this would be a thing. The notion that QAnon is a major part of the United States political discourse is just incredibly insane. Now, in order for me to do this somewhat justice, I'm going to have to explain what QAnon is, because you hear it all the time is at this point, QAnon. We're going to be the party of the college-educated people, and you're going to be the party of QAnon. But, you might not know exactly what QAnon is. Well, here it is. QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory alleging that a secret cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibalistic pedophiles is running a global child sex trafficking ring and plotted against the former U.S. President Donald Trump while he was in office. Yeah. That is in 100% why I did not want to make a video about this and didn't think I would need to. That itself should have been the end. That should have been it. But we'll see as we go more in depth. You see, it started, believe it or not, on 4chan on October 28th, 2017. A user by the name of Q Clearance Patriot posted a thread titled "Calm Before the Storm," where he was referencing Trump's description of a U.S. gathering of military officials that he called the calm before the storm. The storm, for those who do not understand what they're saying, is when supposedly Trump was supposed to find all of the members of the deep state child sex trafficking people and would try to stop them. And the whole thing of this was the deep state was trying to stop him, Obama, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, Nancy Pelosi, Hollywood elites. All of these evil people were trying to stop Donald Trump from doing all these good things. Now, some may recognize this notion of the child, sex trafficking and stuff. Some may recognize this because it sounds very familiar to the conspiracy theory known as Pizzagate, where people were able to be convinced that the Democratic Party was running a child sex trafficking ring underneath a pizzeria named Comet Pizza, because during the WikiLeaks emails, John Podesta mentioned pizza a lot, because apparently pizza in the deep web is code for child sex slaves. again, it's a good thing that I do not monetize this channel, because this would be demonetized 100%. Now, the reason why QAnon, the reason why it's called QAnon, is because the Q is in reference to Q clearance for the United States Department of Energy, indicating that this is an inside source who is leaking this to the public. And many people in this conspiracy theory group have been trying to identify who Q is. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other people would want to know who Q is, but not the Q in the sense that he is a high energy interference in it, but Q in the sense of the person who originally made that first post. I'm pretty sure everybody in the world wants to know who this Q who made the original post is. Now, this actually came off the heels of the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. Pizzagate happened, and the Comet Ping Pong shooting happened. Then this popped up. Now, originally, this was originally seen as this would be nothing, and it would just come in and disappear. Especially considering, this came literally right after the comet shooting. So a lot of people were like, okay, now that this stupid, crazy conspiracy theory hasn't been proven, it was disproven, we can now put this behind us. But no, things started getting a bit more interesting, because people started spreading this QAnon theory. Paul Ferber, Coleman Rogers, and Tracy Diaz, some 4chan moderators and a YouTuber, started to propagate QAnon to a wider audience, starting a YouTube show and moving QAnon to 8chan. And much like the dumb Illuminati meme, where celebrities started putting their hands in a triangle motion to signify the Illuminati and other crazy stupid BS conspiracy theories, all of a sudden other people started talking about QAnon, famous people, Sean Hannity, Roseanne Barr, and Alex Jones, who even claimed that he was in personal contact with this Q individual. And as more mainstream people started talking about QAnon, it of course led to more people taking QAnon seriously, both in the sense that people were going wait, hold on, people are actually taking this conspiracy theory seriously, and people who were taking the conspiracy seriously. By that, I should have phrased it differently, but I mean people who didn't believe it, didn't buy the BS, and then people who completely bought the BS. And since this conspiracy theory was part of the far right, and the far right media circle, and since the far right kind of flourishes on certain social networks like 4chan and Facebook, all of a sudden QAnon activity started popping up even more on these groups, on all these websites. And then things started getting crazy, because unlike that's the thing about these far right things, all these far right things Pizzagate, Kekistan, all right stuff, eventually it made its transition into the real world. People started appearing at Trump rallies holding signs that said they were supporters of QAnon. And similar to this in other far-right movements, like the LaRouche movement, it has spread to other countries. It is now spread to countries literally, it's now in Canada, Britain, Spain, Costa Rica, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, Paraguay, Brazil. And the thing about these that's another thing about these far right things, and conspiracy theories of all these kinds, eventually, or even at the beginning, it was partially, or at least it was started by, or either amplified by malicious groups. Because as it turns out, the University of Southern California started doing an analysis about QAnon groups and QAnon hashtags and retweeting InfoWars and One American News Network and blah, blah, blah. And all these far-right conspiracy groups and stuff. Their findings concluded that at least 25% of the accounts that used QAnon hashtags were bots. Which means that there is a nefarious figure who is actually trying to use this to their advantage, or not just one particular nefarious figure, but like nefarious figures. Like, for example, it's like that notion, like, oh, Russia, it actually does state at one point, like, Russia had a hand, like, to a degree, Russian groups, like Russian-backed Twitter accounts, played a role in propagating QAnon as early as November 2017. Now, when we say that, does that mean, like, oh, was it Vladimir Putin, or was it just some Russian oligarchs who want to screw with the American political system? It could be a little bit of both, even. I wouldn't be surprised if any political group in any area of the world that didn't like the United States was propagating QAnon. Even if, like, it could be a communist group, even. Like, we don't know where it began. We never will know at this point where QAnon began, or, like, what was the intentions. Like, we will never know. For all we know, this could be somebody who legitimately believes that this is happening and, like, took it upon himself to quote-unquote reveal this information, but is instead just, like, this wacky, like, idiot. It could be a nefarious figure. Like, it could be somebody who is trying to, like, dismantle, or I guess to a degree dismantle, like, sow discord. Like, it could just, like, or like, this is another possibility. It could just be someone who was just playing a joke. Someone who, like, said, like, just this inane thing that he thought that nobody would take seriously, and then all of a sudden, a decent number of the country actually believes it. And it's stupid because, like, and it shows, like, just how cold, like, people can be. Because here's the thing, QAnon wasn't just it. It wasn't, like, vague. They gave specifics. Like, they were specific in certain things. Here's some things. Like, here are all of the things that they stated. They stated that the storm would take place on November 3rd, 2017. Nothing happened. They said, oh, wait, the storm would actually take place the day Biden's inauguration would happen, and that Trump would, like, basically they were saying, like, Trump would start, like, a military fascist coup and, like, take over and, like, get rid of the Satan-worshipping pedophiles. Didn't happen. A major event about the Department of Defense would happen on February 1st, 2018. Nothing happened. People targeted by the president would commit suicide en masse on February 10th, 2018. No prominent individual committed suicide that day. That there would be a car bombing in London on February 16th, 2018. No bombing. That the Trump military parade would never be forgotten. Didn't happen. The Five Eyes would not be around much longer. The Five Eyes, for those who don't know, is like a faction, like a military, like a multilateral coalition of, like, 5 countries. It's still around. Something major would happen in Chongqing on April 10th, 2018. Nothing happened that day. That there would be a bombshell revelation about North Korea on May 2018. No development happened. A smoking gun video of Hillary Clinton would emerge in March 2018. Nothing happened. Multiple failed predictions that John McCain would resign from the United States Senate. No, he died. Multiple failed predictions that Mark Zuckerberg would leave Facebook and then leave the United States. Neither happened. There were predictions that Jack Dorsey would be forced to resign. Nope. There were multiple failed predictions that Pope Francis would be arrested on felony charges. There were multiple failed predictions that something big would happen or truth would emerge, quote-unquote, next week. No, nothing here. And, of course, their failed prediction that despite, like, Trump losing, that he would be inaugurated again on January 20th. The whole reason they had the Capitol Hill riot. No, did not happen. They've also made a lot of false claims that the CIA installed Kim Jong-un as a puppet ruler. They made the false claim that Debbie Wasserman Schultz hired a Salvadorian gang member from the MS-13 to kill Seth Rich, bringing that old conspiracy theory back. They made the suggestion that Angela Merkel is Adolf Hitler's granddaughter. They claim that every mass shooting is a false flag operation. They claim that Obama, Clinton, and Soros are planning a coup against Trump. Didn't happen. They claim that the Mueller investigation was actually a counter-coup led by Trump, who pretended to conspire with Russia to hire Mueller to secretly investigate the Democrats. they claim that the Rothschilds were here. The Rothschilds gotta bring up that anti-Semitic conspiracy theory too. QAnon. Do you want to believe in every single conspiracy theory but not look like a complete idiot? Well, just say you believe one. But their biggest claim that's happening right now is that they believe that the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871 made the United States into a corporation. But wait, it gets better. Then on March 4th, Trump will return to the White House and will be inaugurated as the 19th president of the United States, because every president after then was the president of the corporation, not the country, and that Trump will then make it so that everything that happened after the United States supposedly became a corporation didn't count. More particularly, that every single amendment that was passed after 1869 doesn't count. Which, for those who don't know which amendment that actually includes, now, this is interesting because I didn't think that they would go this far, because apparently this would make it so that even in this magical fantasy land where Trump is brought back and certain amendments after certain points don't count, it does mean that slavery would still be abolished, and this fake QAnon land, slavery would still be gone, but the right for African Americans to vote, that wouldn't be a thing. But, QAnon, man, the Q's just stating facts. Now, the identity of QAnon, again, very interesting subject. Many people believe that Q is a certain individual. We don't know exactly where Q comes from. The way these anonymous message boards work is so that they explicitly hide the people's identities. And the only way to identify that Q is one person would be to check the trip code. But it turns out that QAnon has used a lot of different trip codes, because the thing is, when you're an anonymous person on an anonymous website, a ton of people will use that moniker. They will. Fantasyland tries to say that this individual is someone very prevalent. The biggest, dumbest theory that made it into the mainstream of QAnon was that QAnon was secretly John F. Kennedy Jr., who was working with Donald Trump behind the scenes to try and end, he faked his own death specifically to help Donald Trump down the line to save the world, and that on one particular date, I forget when, I think it was March 10th of 2020, he would then reemerge and make it a public statement saying I'm alive, I'm doing well, and Trump would pick him to be his running mate in the 2020 election and dump Pence in a river. Now, that's stupid. And, there are even some conspiracy theories about, from people who are trying to, crack the code of QAnon to figure out who he really is. Who is actually the individual who has started this. Many people are pointing to, some, bad figures. Russia's been blamed. Some of you have made the conspiracy theory that Trump himself is Q, and that he started this conspiracy theory particularly so that he could, reveal to the world all this. Or to the QAnon believers, they believe that Trump started this so he could whistleblow. But the most likely explanation was that Q was, multiple people at this point. Whoever started QAnon at one point or another, whoever made the first post, I don't know. That part's kind of irrelevant at this point. The thing is, who is this supposed QAnon person now? And the biggest theory is that the people who are propagating QAnon the most, the people who are heads of 8chan, Jim Watkins and his son Ron Watkins, are Q. Or some of these people who one of the people who I mentioned before started a QAnon sort of podcast, was actually caught on that podcast signing into an account that claimed to be Q. Now, of course, the reason why they would be, at least signing into QAnon and pretending to be him, pretending to be it now, is because they have financial gains of this. one started a podcast that is literally on the idea of like, oh, we're going to be the QAnon cast, and, you know, they would probably get donations and such. Meanwhile, the other two were literally like people who they have a financial stake in the site, and they literally even formed a QAnon super PAC. And that ties into why I always thought that QAnon was just like, even when I did know that QAnon was starting to be a thing, I originally didn't think much of it. I was just like, I mean, it's a stupid BS conspiracy theory. Why would anybody buy it? That was until it seemed that QAnon was getting a bit more attention than people were even thinking. Most prominently because people were starting to realize that there were people running for office who believed in the QAnon conspiracy theory. Like, there were a lot of people who were running to literally be the QAnon candidates. 10 of them actually making it to the general election. Well, technically 11, because it turns out that even if Donald Trump isn't Q himself, he was 100% ready to exploit it however he could. Like, I mean, if you have a cult-like following of people who literally believe that you're trying to defend the world against Satan-worshipping pedophiles, you know, you kind of learn that if you have those sheep, you're gonna herd them. And he kept, he didn't deny QAnon, but he also, he didn't, explicitly talk about QAnon, but he also did not, deny QAnon. When there would be a QAnon, flag at one of his rallies, he would edit it so that it would appear in a YouTube video that he would post of his rally, make sure that it was in camera frame, and the QAnon supporters sort of, took it as a sign, Trump knows, and Trump knows we'll follow him to the ends of the earth. And they tried to follow him wherever he led them. When he led them to try and, push for, ending, certain voter things so he could try and hold on to the office for however long he could. And, I mean, the thing about QAnon is that, it's not completely dead, because remember, I just told you they're still holding out on this potential, Trump might win on March 4th. But the thing about the QAnon is that they legitimately are at this point where they're at a crossroads. Trump lost, everything is done, the red wall has crashed, and they didn't know what to do. Some people were suggesting, it's time to wrap up, time to close doors. But no, it's still spreading. There are people who go on mainstream news that are literally my family still believes in QAnon. They still are into this. They still buy into the BS. And state Republican parties are literally adopting QAnon slogans, the storm is coming, into, their slogans, the Texas Republican Party. The thing is, and we can even point to the fact that this is, people shouldn't have been, completely, people were, flabbergasted that this thing actually ended up becoming mainstream. But this is just a thing that happens, I know I don't want to do this, but, majority of the people of this nation believe that there is a magic sky fairy that gives you whatever you want if you put your hands together and go, please, can I have this thing? But, we actually saw this, pipeline form into QAnon. There is literally a pipeline that has happened for QAnon that can actually be sort of exemplified into, some sort of, left-right thing. Let me explain. Gamergate. Now, I know this is going to sound crazy, but Gamergate actually is the key. Gamergate started as a sort of, pushback to progressivism in journalism and games. Games are getting too PC. They're getting, all women characters and, this. So they have to combat against it. And that led to the anti-SJW movement. People like TJ Kirk, Sargon of Akkad, Chris Reagan, they all sort of came into this big thing, And they sort of went into the Bernie campaign because, like, Bernie was sort of like the antithesis. Like, he was a lefty, but he also, like, was an antithesis to certain things. Like, he was an old white guy. Hillary was not. And I'm not saying, like, that's the main reason that I mean, maybe them specifically, but, like, that's not the main reason everybody went to him. But it was, like, again, like, it's this thing, like, and you see this with a lot of people on, like, the left. During this time period, they wanted all of the good progressive things, but didn't want the SJWs. And Bernie sort of gave them that. Like, yes, we can have universal healthcare, we can have legal weed, but, like, we don't need to talk about the blue-haired college kids. And that sort of led to this, like, factioning of the Bernie movement. And when it ended, it sort of, like, fractured a bit into many different directions. And some of them went straight to Trump, but some of them didn't necessarily go straight there. They sort of went to other things, like, one of the main, like, especially considering given the WikiLeaks scenario. WikiLeaks revealed, like, the DNC screwed Hillary Clinton. So one of the things that they also revealed was that, you know, Seth Rich, like, we're talking about Seth Rich, like, possibly Seth Rich could have been killed. And many of them sort of hopped onto that train. Nico House being a prime example. Like, literally, Nico House, you can kind of, this trend can literally almost exactly go directly with Nico House, except for, like, 2 parts. And you'll know those parts when I get to those parts. Then, when at that point, you get to 4chan and Poll. Now, I should have prefaced, like, these are for the people in their formative years, like, the teenagers to, young adults. And that's where they get to the Kekistan, you know, the alt-right, like, not even the alt-right, like, sort of, not even, like, alt-light, which is what they were like, sort of, like, in the, like, trollish nature of, like, the 4chan culture, where they would, like, sing Shadowlay, but, like, not actually mean it, because it's the thing about, like, the people who were, like, part of, like, sort of the early alt-right, half of them were, like, full-on Nazis that were, like, super into, like, actually, like, using the memes to, like, bring people into their hateful ideology. But then some of them were just people who were, like, just screwing with people. But then after you get to that, you then get into the Pizzagate, because that's where things flourished. And then when you get to Pizzagate, you get to QAnon. Now you might say, well, what's my source? How do I know this is what happened? Because I was there. I was a young 16-year-old when all this stuff was happening. I was there when Gamergate was being hashtagged all over the internet. I was there when I saw the anti-SJWs sort of gain prominence on YouTube. I was there when these same people turned into right-wingers. I was there when they were parroting conspiracy theories about Seth Rich potentially being murdered. And to certain levels and certain degrees, I bought into it. And a lot of people who happen to be in my age range that might have been, you know, different ethnically, or may have had different slight political leanings than I did, may have went down different rabbit holes. And even then, maybe there's someone who literally has my exact same, like, viewpoints, even at the time, and then they just kept going. Like, for example, Tim Canova. Tim Canova was a huge lefty, but then all this stuff happened. Now he's a huge right-winger. Sargon of Akkad, and, like, a bunch of other people. All this stuff happened. I saw this happen. I grew up during the time period where QAnon was growing up, when it was in its fetal stages, when its grandparents were in fetal stages. Now, I mean, this episode isn't even like some people who talk about QAnon try to offer solutions. Like, how do we pull people out of QAnon? Well, to a degree, there is one solution, and that's simply helping people. That's all. The only advice I can give: help people. If people's needs are met, they won't fall into the trap. It's the same thing with every other, like, fascist, white nationalist, or whatever group. Any kind of hate group, or any kind of group in general. Gangs, the KKK, and, like, other, like, hate groups. They flourish when people are at their worst. Young white men get pulled into Richard Spencer and, like, other kinds of, like, Nazi groups because they're like in the stage of their life where they don't know what to do with their lives. And given the nation that they have put forth to them, they don't like it. They don't want this. They want a nation where they can feel better, where they can feel superior. And that's when these groups come to the fray. It's literally like a predator preying on a child, which is ironically what QAnon is, like saying like, oh, we're the big people trying to prevent this. But they're kind of using the same tactics. People who are vulnerable, people who are weak, and people who have nothing to do. These are the people that make them flourish. But when their needs are met, and when they are in a society that treats them with dignity and respect, this won't happen as much. You'll still get the off chance. I neglected one thing, the incel rage. Like, there are a bunch of, like, socially awkward young boys, young adults, that don't know how to talk to girls, and they're kind of scared of it. And then they get pushed into this, like, situation where they feel like they need drastic measures to actually accomplish this, and they commit horrible acts of violence. And people are always, like, they neglect the fact that, like, they'll immediately just brush these people off as, like, insane weirdos. But people forget, like, people will literally be one step away from doing this. But if they're in a society where they can, like, do certain things and, like, talk about certain issues, and, like, their needs are met, like for example, all these young boys, if they, like, a lot of these guys are, like, they're scared because they don't want to enter the workforce. They don't know how to live in this world that they've been given. But if you give them the opportunities, they will, like, these will be curbed. This will be stopped. And yeah, that's all I have to say in that regard. Because I know I probably rambled, like, at that end because I didn't think I was actually going to try and fix the problem. But I mean, there is the solution is the easiest solution. If people are helped, then they won't feel the need to be drawn to this. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or check out my articles on the Independent Political Report.